How could we ever begin to embark on our journey to womanhood when we recoil in disgust or blush in embarrassment at the thought, sight, or mention of our periods? Periods are natural, and they need to be embraced if we truly want to thrive in our womanhood. From menarche up until our menopause, the power of our monthly death and rebirth cycle is something to be celebrated. Of course, the journey there can be difficult, especially if your cycles were accompanied with subconscious shame and period pains like mine were. Over recent years, I've been rebuilding the relationship to my body and learning how to love my period. So that's what today's video is about, ways in which we can learn to love and appreciate our periods from denial and shame to acceptance. I'm of the belief that the reasons why I suffered with amenorrhea, that means absent periods, and dysmenorrhea, which means painful periods, I think the reasons why I suffered with those things was because of the shame, because I just have a belief that your constant subconscious thoughts manifest in your body. I feel like all the shame I was holding in from whether it's society or family manifested in my womb. It's why when I had a scan one time, I had cysts all over my ovaries, PCOS. I feel like it's why I had the cramps. I feel like it's why my periods would happen for months at end, or they wouldn't come for months. I feel like the irregularity was just due to the shame that I was carrying. I never had someone say like, let's get to the bottom of this. Even when I was diagnosed with PCOS, I didn't feel empowered or supported. Like I was just given the diagnosis and then that was that. I wasn't even told what could help me. What I was told was to take birth control. I just remember thinking to myself, if my body can't function by itself, then there's a problem. And I was like, well, I'm not going to use the pill to fix it. And then obviously I was a teenager. Like I was just like, you know what? I don't even want to think about this. I was like, I'm just going to ignore it and get on with my life. Then abuse the pill. When I don't want to have my period, I'm just going to take the pill for weeks on end. Yeah, I was just very blasé about it. But I just feel like I had such a lack of guidance. No support from the NHS. My family couldn't necessarily help me either because they don't know the answers. I eventually had to come to my own conclusions.
I find myself getting a bit emotional reading it because I'm just like, there's just so much struggle that I've had with my menstrual cycles. And she said something like, fertility or your menstrual cycle is an indicator of health. And to think that I've been unintentionally in poor health since the age of like 10, it's just kind of, it's unbelievable because then you kind of realise that there's so many people suffering. So I'm actually quite excited to learn even more. I want to know the menstrual cycle off by heart and stop having this like ignorance around it.
So menarche is the first day that you start your period, and I don't actually remember this, and I feel like the shame has erased it from my memory. The first thing I felt was like, I have to hide this, and so I did for like a year. And this is why I think about femininity and womanhood a lot, because I don't want it to be that way. What do you do? I sought out a lot of people who did start to empower me and kind of educate me about femininity, womanhood, and periods specifically. If you know me, my favorite podcast in the whole world is Horrible Decisions. And although this is a podcast about sexuality informs femininity. And I feel like me expanding my mind to sexuality in turn helped me to understand my femininity more. Sometimes they would have doctors and medical guests on and they would talk about different period problems, which was actually really important for me. When I would absorb their content over the last 7 years, because the podcast has been here for 7 years, it led me to, question things more and become more comfortable with my body, which helped me become more comfortable with my periods in turn. Another YouTuber that I watch, that I love, Hitomi. She speaks about periods. She is a spiritual girly. She talks about like sacred sexuality. She talks about period care, identity. All of these things feed into your femininity and your womanhood. She uplifted the spiritual aspects of periods and she let me know how sacred it actually was and how powerful that we are. I remember I read this quote somewhere. They were saying that the womb is the connection between God and the earth, because without the womb, you can't have humans here. Sometimes we actually forget you can actually make children inside of you, and that's what the period is there to symbolize. And so she definitely taught me that the period is not just a biological, sterile, functional part of the body. It is womanhood, it's life, and it's a celebration, and we have to uplift it, and we have to be proud of it. More recently, Dr. Berg, even though he's a man, he helped me understand the biological side to why I was experiencing what I was. He helped me to understand blood sugar levels, and how the constant intaking of carbs and sugar is spiking your insulin, and the lack of fasting and the constant eating is causing your hormones to go up and down. So he was like, my sister introduced him to me in 2023. That's when I started doing intermittent fasting, and that's the first time in a long time that I started to get regular periods. And I couldn't believe that like food, like just changing what I was eating actually was fixing a problem that I was literally having for years and years. His information was the first practical application I had for my periods, and I was so happy last year when my period came back. I couldn't believe that like I went on YouTube, listened to something, and it actually worked. So I was in awe from then. And so leading on from Dr. Berg is Dr. Mindy Pelz. I think my sister introduced me to her as well. Or maybe I saw her on Diary of a CEO, I can't remember. Again, she speaks about the health and the biological side to intermittent fasting, which is linked to the hormones. But I like her even more because hers is specifically about women. She spoke about how, because we're women, there are parts of our cycle where we do need more fats, where we do need more healthy carbs. And I really like that. I felt so catered to. Like when I was reading her book, like each page I was turning, I'm telling you, I could have cried. You know when you just feel seen and you just feel like, oh, finally someone's helping me. Like you feel so helpless all of the time. And then you read something and you're like, oh my God, like where were you for all of my life? I feel so passionate about understanding womanhood, femininity, and empowering like periods. I think about children more and more every day. Even though I work with children every day and they really get on my nerves, I still have that innate feeling of like, yeah, I'm going to have my family in, I'd say, the next 8 to 10 years. So I need to move on, don't I? But I think about how I would want my daughters to feel about their body, and how I just want them to feel about themselves, and how I want them to have a blueprint to what being a woman is. Because I feel like this main thing is like there's not really a blueprint, and I'm not saying they have to copy exactly what I'm doing, but I want them to have ideas to riff off of. So I feel like it's my job to build that for myself so I can give it to my girls. But in order to lessen these taboos, you have to come to a point of acceptance within yourself. If you don't accept your body, if you don't accept your femininity, if you don't know what it means to you, if you don't have a blueprint, if you aren't thinking about these things, how are you supposed to inform future generations about how they should feel, or give them ideas of what they can feel like if you don't even have that blueprint for yourself? So that's mainly what my goal is right now, is to continue empowering myself and having those conversations and being open about what I'm going through. Like the last video I had a little TMI bit where I was telling you guys about how every time my period finishes, my vagina dries up and I don't know why. And I'm not gonna lie, it even happened this time. It literally happened today. My period finished 2 days ago. It's very dry. It's dry. And now I know the reason is low estrogen, cool, but like it's okay to say that. You know, it's a body part, and it's something that we need to talk about so we can actually help each other and not be dry vaginal girls, you know? It's important to reflect on your thoughts, your actions, your feelings toward periods. Like, how do you actually feel about your period? Just speak frankly. I really like people who speak frankly and honestly. I will continue to make content about my periods because I think it's necessary. Also, if there are problems, I think it's so important to investigate them holistically and get to the root cause. Although many women, including myself, weren't taught to love our periods and femininity, dwelling on past mistakes isn't necessary. It's your job to rewrite the narrative surrounding womanhood into something that feels uplifting or fulfilling to you, or any other way you believe womanhood should feel like. It takes reflecting on your own attitudes surrounding the matter, careful evaluation of your beliefs, and a decision of which ones you would like to adopt or abandon. Then, embodying the woman you would be proud to present to future generations.